Congratulations, you've just found the number one over 50 health and wellness podcast on the planet. Hello and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Show. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm a healthy aging expert and founder of The Silver Edge, and I am on a mission to help men and women just like you build lean, strong, healthy, capable, amazing bodies they love for the rest of their lives. All right, people, let's start right here. If you are over 50 and you are struggling to lose fat, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it's probably not because you're not trying hard enough. To be sure, that's a lot of people, but I'm guessing that those of you that are tuning into this podcast, that's probably not you. In fact, it's probably the exact opposite. You're trying, you're working out, you're eating less, and you're making an effort to quote unquote be healthy. But progress is slow, or maybe energy is really low, and you're starting to wonder if maybe, just maybe, this just doesn't work for me anymore. Look, here's the reality. Here's the truth. Most people over 50 aren't failing because they're lazy. They're failing because they're making a handful of very common mistakes over and over again. Mistakes that actually feel productive. Mistakes that probably used to work when you're in your 30s and 40s, that probably worked for you. And mistakes that the fitness industry still tells you are the answer. And those mistakes are quietly keeping you stuck. So today we're going to fix all that because you don't need more effort. You just need fewer mistakes. You need to be more efficient. So let's break down the 5 biggest mistakes that I see and how to start correcting them right away. Now, before we go any further, before we get into the actual 5 mistakes here, I want to make something really, really clear. If you've been making these mistakes, look, they make sense. You're not doing anything stupid. You're not, quote unquote, bad at this, and you're definitely not alone here. In fact, almost everyone I talk to over 50 has made at least a few of these. And look, myself, personally, I've made all of them, to be sure, in my past. And for most of you that you'll probably, when I get to those, you're probably going to relate to that and go, yeah, I've made that mistake. Or maybe, just maybe, I'm making that mistake right now. Why is that? Well, it's because these are the exact strategies that most of us have been taught for years. We should eat less and move more and do some more cardio, and we should push harder, and we should be more focused and more disciplined. And look, to be fair, again, those things did work for us at one point, maybe in your 20s, in your 30s, maybe even in your early 40s. So it's completely logical to think, I'll just do more of that, and maybe I'll do even more of that, and I'll do it even harder. But the problem is your body has changed, not in a bad way, just in a way that requires some slight tweaks. It requires a different approach. Your recovery is different. Your muscle mass matters a whole lot more now. Stress impacts you more. Sleep, or lack of sleep, I should say, impacts you way more now. So when you apply the same old strategy to a different body, you don't get the same result. So no, you're not crazy. What used to work is no longer working. Yes, you are correct in that. And that's where I think this frustration comes from. It feels like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm doing everything right, quote unquote right. So why isn't it working? So bear with me, because once you understand that the game has changed, you can stop blaming yourself and you can start adjusting your strategy. And I'm telling you, that's where real progress starts to come back. So let's jump into this, because this is the shift that changes everything. Fat loss after 50 is not harder. It's just different. And again, once you understand that, a lot of your frustration is going to start making sense, because most people are still playing by these same old rules. Remember, it's eat less and move more, push harder, all that fun stuff. But when we were in younger bodies, our bodies were much more resilient, right? We had better recovery capacity. Maybe we had lower stress. And honestly, we had more margin for error. But after 50, that game changes, right? I think most of you can relate to that. Muscle becomes not just more important, but it becomes critical. Recovery becomes a priority. Can't be an afterthought for those of us after 50. And look, sleep and stress start playing bigger and bigger roles as we age up. And what I'm saying, a bigger role in the results that we're looking for. And your body becomes more sensitive to the signals you sent it. So if you remember last week, we talked a lot about the signals that we are sending to our body, and our body is just responding to those signals. So when you apply that old strategy to this new phase of your life, it's like using a flip phone in a smartphone world. It's just, you're going to get some reception, but that's just about it. So technically it works, but it's not going to get you very far. So here's the new game. It's not about doing more. It's about doing the right things in the right order with enough consistency for your body to learn to trust the process. So strength is going to become the driver. Fuel is going to become strategic, not punishment. And recovery is definitely going to be baked in. It's part of our master plan here. And when we get those pieces lined up, fat loss stops feeling like a grind and starts feeling like something your body is actually willing to do. Same goal, just different game. And once you start playing it the right way, I'm telling you, everything gets easier. All right, so let's jump into these. Let's talk about the 5 biggest mistakes, because these are the 5 biggest mistakes we see here at the Silver Edge over and over and over again with our over 50 folks that are specifically trying to lose fat, right? A lot of our clients will come in and their goal is, I want to lose weight. We very quickly shift that and say, no, you don't necessarily want to lose weight. You want to lose fat. We want to build muscle, lose fat, be strong, fit, healthy, all that good stuff. So remember, again, these are not by any means stupid mistakes. They're not dumb mistakes. They are logical. They're common, but they're quietly keeping us stuck. So let's jump into these. Mistake number 1, you OG listeners, you know what's getting ready to happen, right? Those of you that are new here, this one's going to probably catch you by surprise, but far and away, mistake number 1 is eating less and less. Look, let's face it, this is the default move. Your progress slows, so you cut some more calories. Then it slows again, so you cut a little more. But pretty soon you're eating less than you did 10 years ago, and somehow your results are worse. So yeah, I am here to tell you that there are a whole bunch of y'all that are overweight and under eating. Let me repeat that. Overweight and under eating. Yes, that is possible. And look, all the 35-year-old fitness bros, don't come at me with your crazy, well, that defies the laws of thermodynamics. No, it doesn't. Yes, thermodynamics is real. We're not defying any physics here. Calorie deficits are necessary in order to lose weight. But tell Mrs. Smith, who's been eating 1,200 calories for the last 3, 4, 5 years, maybe a decade, that she should eat less food than she's currently eating to drop her last 10 pounds. That just doesn't make any sense, right? Because here's why. Your body adapts. When we lower calories, especially for those of y'all that are already eating pretty low calorie, we lower energy. And then when we lower energy, we lower output. So that makes us feel tired and sluggish and hangry, right? We're hungry all the darn time. And our fat loss stalls. Not because you're eating too much, but because you've trained your body to conserve. You're in this fat storage mode, right? This primal ancestral fat storage mode. Because remember, every time you go on another diet, every time you slash your calories, and every time you eat less food, your metabolism doesn't understand you're just trying to lose a few pesky pounds. It perceives this as food scarcity, and it goes into full-on survival mode. In survival mode, that's code word for clinging onto your precious fat stores, because that's how your metabolism perceives the fat in your body. It says, hey, this is fantastic. We've got this in case there's, an extended period of food scarcity, which fortunately, that's not the case for most of us. But unfortunately, we've got this. The way Coach Monica says it all the time is we've got this caveman wiring in these modern environments, and that's very, very true, right? So sometimes the problem isn't that you're overeating. And actually, let me back up and be very, very clear here. Yes, for a whole bunch of population, including people over 50, the problem is that they're just eating too many calories. That's a really simple fix. Just eat less, right? But I suspect if you're tuning into this show, especially if you're somebody who's been with us for a while, that's probably not you. So as we start aging up and our metabolism starts slowing down, which, side note, I don't want to go on a complete and total rabbit trail here, but that's not because you're getting older so much. It's because of your behavior change as you age up. But at any rate, as we're aging up, the problem isn't necessarily that you're overeating. It's that you've been under eating for such a long time, right? So that is mistake number 1 for a lot of you all. It's just this constant yo-yo dieting. It's this constant diet culture. It's just eating less and less and less food. And again, for all the reasons we just explained, that's no bueno for long-term healthy body composition, for long-term fat loss and building muscle, all that stuff. All right, mistake number 2, we see this all the time again. I think it's because our culture promotes it so much, but it's doing too much cardio. Look, I get it. I love cardio. I do cardio. Cardio feels productive because you sweat and your heart rate goes up and you feel like you're quote unquote burning some calories. Here's the issue. Cardio doesn't build muscle, and muscle is what drives your metabolism. It's the primary driver of your metabolism. So when cardio becomes the main strategy, you burn calories in the moment, but you don't improve the system long term. And when you combine that with undereating, you get tired, you get flat, and your progress slows. Now, look, I am not trashing cardio, just to be very clear here. I think everybody should do cardio. But here's the order of operations here. If you are an undereater, a whole bunch of cardio is just disaster for you. You should focus on strength training. You should cut back on the cardio. Once you've bolstered your metabolism, once your metabolism is rip roaring, that's when it's time to add back in your cardio. Okay? But that is mistake number 2, is just this over-reliance on cardio specifically for weight loss. All right, mistake number 3, not prioritizing strength training. This seems to be a big one in our age demographic, not so much for the guys, although a whole lot of you guys definitely, but certainly a lot of our ladies, right? Because in our generation, the females that are 50, 60, 70 probably grew up in that sort of Jane Fonda aerobics sort of that was fitness, right? Or maybe going for a run or getting on a treadmill or doing a class or maybe those little pink hand weights. But actual strength training like dumbbells and kettlebells and barbells and squat racks, until recently, that was kind of taboo. So this is a huge mistake for those of us over 50. You've probably heard the term sarcopenia, which I don't like the definition. The actual definition of sarcopenia is age-related muscle loss. Look, if you're 90, that's you. You have lost muscle because you're aging, 100%. You're in your 50s, even if you're in your 60s, I'm calling BS on that. You're not losing strength. You're not losing muscle, I should say, because you're getting old, because you're 50, because you're 60. You are losing muscle because you're not using it, because you're not sending a loud, clear signal to your metabolism that says, hey, we need this metabolically expensive muscle on our body. And look, when I say metabolically expensive muscle, you can swap out the words calorie burning, right? Because metabolically expensive means it requires more calorie burn just to have that muscle on your body, not even while you're using it. So this looks like lifting weights, not random exercises. So a lot of times when we're talking to new clients coming in, they go, yeah, I'm strength training, but very often it's a combination of these very light weights or just random kind of exercises. There's no built-in roadmap or progression. And look, I'm not knocking that. That's better than nothing, but that's not real strength training. That's activity. After 50, strength is everything because muscle is going to support, like I said, it's going to support your metabolism. It's going to support your joint health. It's going to support your balance and your longevity. Oh, and get this, the more muscle you have, the more muscle building activity you do, the stronger your bones get. So you've probably heard of osteopenia. Again, I don't like the definition because it's age-related bone density loss. Your bones, look, you in your 50s, your bones ain't getting weak and less dense because you're in your 50s. It's because you're just not putting a load on there and giving them a reason to stay strong over time. So if you're not getting stronger over time, and by that I mean you have a professionally designed, age-appropriate functional strength training program that is strategically designed to build type 2 muscle in your body's really got no reason to change. All right, so that was mistake number 3, not prioritizing strength training. Mistake number 4, not having a weekly structure. So remember I just said, hey, you should have a professionally designed, age-appropriate, functional workout that is strategic. In other words, it is designed to put muscle on your body. This is a huge one. And not only should you have this weekly structure, but it should fit your real life, right? Maybe your plan is perfect on paper, but if it doesn't fit your real life where you are now, it's going to fall apart, right? Within the first couple of weeks. So maybe you miss a workout, meals get inconsistent, life gets busy, and all of a sudden you're starting over again. That isn't a discipline problem. That's usually a structure problem. If your week isn't designed to survive real life, it won't. So not only do you have to have a strategic strength training program, but it's actually got to fit your real life. So if you travel all the time, you've got to take that into account. If you're not a morning person, you got to take that into account, right? So again, mistake number 4, your program should have a repeatable weekly structure that actually fits your life. And then finally, mistake number 5. Look, I'm still guilty of this one myself, but it's expecting fast results, right? This one kills more progress than probably anything else. And we see it all the time. The New Year's resolutions is where it's really classic, right? Where we know that most people have ditched their health related New Year's resolution within the first few weeks. They don't even make it to February, for crying out loud. But look, see if this sounds familiar. You start strong. This is it. This is the time, right? You expect some quick changes, and then they don't happen, or they don't happen fast enough. So you change the plans. Now I got a new diet, new program, new approach. But your body hasn't had time to adapt to anything yet. So you just keep resetting the process before it's ever had a chance to work. And after 50, look, that timeline really matters because your body needs consistency more than intensity. And look, to be fair, working out, eating healthy, all this healthy aging stuff that I promote all the time on this podcast, it is tough, right? Because there are no fast results. Look, you can do everything perfectly today. You can get the world's best workout. You can eat super clean. You can just be just like a monk. No stress is touching you today, and you can sleep like a baby. Tomorrow, you wake up, you look in the mirror, you don't look any different. You step on the scale, the number's the same. Maybe it even went up a little bit, right? Because water weight, electrolytes, etc. So we repeat day 2. We do the same thing. Maybe instead of today's not a workout day, but we get all our steps in. We hydrate. We eat perfectly. Everything's right on track. We're managing our stress. We sleep perfectly. Day 2 in the books. We wake up. We look in the mirror. Dang it, nothing's changed. We step on the scale. Nothing's changed. What the heck, right? Therein lies the problem, right? So one of two things typically happens after, say, a week of that or a couple weeks of that, maybe even, is we are expecting these fast results. So now we're either going to do one of two things. We're just going to quit. It ain't for me. Or we're just going to program hop. We're going to try a new diet, new program, new approach, new something. I'm going to try intermittent fasting this time. I'm going to cut out all carbs. I'm going to do a sugar fast. I'm going to do whatever, right? That's not it. So our coaching program, our one-on-one coaching program is actually 6 months, and it's 6 months for a reason. That is enough time to give people the results, to start to see the results they're looking for. And it really depends on what your results you're looking for, whether 6 months is even enough time, right? So think of it this way. After, say, 2 months, 60 days, you should definitely be feeling the difference. You're probably feeling a little different after 30 days, but by 60 days, you should be feeling more energetic. You should be feeling stronger. You should be feeling more energetic, more confident. And after 3-4 months, you should start to notice some changes in your body composition. In fact, friends that haven't seen you in 3 or 4 months should say something. Say, hey, you're looking great. Are you losing weight? Maybe you haven't even lost a single pound on the scale because perhaps you've gained a couple of pounds of muscle and lost a couple of pounds of fat. Well, I'm here to tell you that's going to make you look and feel much better. And then again, by 6 months, certainly we should expect to see some body changes there. So just to kind of get you a stake in the ground of what realistic timeline for some sort of results are, I would like you to think this time next year. For most of you listening to this, whatever you want is realistic by this time next year. Now, some of you, maybe you've got hundreds of pounds to lose, or you're very, very deconditioned and you have limitations. Maybe it's longer than that. For a lot of you, maybe it's shorter than that. But a really good way to put this into perspective is say, okay, if I commit to this long, not looking for the fast results, I'm in this for strategically, I want permanent results. Change your timeline to not by my kid's wedding in 2 months, or by my cruise coming up, or summer vacation. I will look good this, May to go to the beach, whatever. Get that out of your mind and think, okay, this time next year, I'll have whatever I want, and I'll have it sustainably because I would have done it slow, steady, not insanely, like a sane person, but I also would have had a whole year of practicing these healthy habits that will help me to sustain this for the rest of my life. And I'll leave you with one other thought here when it comes to fast results. Not going to sugarcoat it. It is difficult to get in really great shape the first time. It really is. In fact, I saw it was a social media post with the V-Shred guy, Vincent Sant, I think his name is, and he said, "Look, it's really, really hard to get." And he's like 30 and is incredibly jacked and ripped and 6-pack abs. So that's what he's talking about. It's really hard to get in great shape, but guess what? Once you've done it, you're good for life. He said, "Look, you can completely lose it all and go back to, whatever. But because you've learned the secret, so to speak, of getting in that kind of shape, you can always go back to it. But it's also much, much easier to maintain a healthy physique than it is to build one in the first place. So keep that in mind. All right, so here's the main takeaway from all of this. I think it's rarely one big glaring mistake that most people are making. It's usually a combination of small ones that add up over time. And once you see them, once you know what they are, you can start fixing them. And this is where this actually gets kind of interesting. Because it's not usually just one mistake, and because it's usually a combination of them, it's kind of frustrating, right? But each one on its own probably doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But when they stack together, they can start working against each other. So think about this. You're eating less and less food, right? You're restricting calories. You are doing more and more cardio. You are definitely not building muscle in that state. You are inconsistent perhaps from week to week, and maybe you're expecting fast results. So individually, those might feel like effort, but together they send a very clear signal to your metabolism, and that's this. Energy is low, stress is high, we need to conserve. And when I say conserve, I mean cling to our fat stores. So your body responds exactly how it's supposed to. It's going to slow down, it's going to hold on to fat, it's going to reduce energy output and make you feel tired and probably cranky. And now you're stuck in this loop where you're working harder, but you're getting less and less and less in return. In fact, some of you might even be going the wrong way. And because you're not seeing any progress, you double down. Maybe you just throw I just need more determination. I need more willpower. I need more grit. I need more motivation. So I'm going to eat even less. I'm going to do even more. And that cycle tightens. And that's why people feel like, man, I'm doing everything right. And so why isn't this working? It must be my genetics. It must be because I'm getting old. Look, it's not that nothing is working. It's just that the signals are stacked in the wrong direction. So good news is the same thing works in reverse. When you fix just a few key pieces, your strength training and the proper fueling and consistent structure and a realistic timeline, those signals start stacking for you. Your energy improves, your recovery improves, and fat loss becomes easier, becomes possible again. Not because you're doing more, but because everything is finally aligned. All right, so if those are the mistakes, what do you actually do instead? How are we going to correct these mistakes? Not perfectly, not all at once, just a little better. We're going to make some tweaks here. So this isn't about flipping your whole life upside down. We are not big fans of that kind of change. It's about making a few key corrections that start sending the right signals again. So number one action item, strength becomes your priority. 100%, this is your foundation. If you don't do anything else, do this. This is your foundation. Again, I'm not talking about these random workouts some of you guys are doing, although to be fair, that's better than nothing. It's better than being on the couch. I'm not saying just be active. I'm saying intentional strength training. About 3 days a week is perfect, usually for most of you, with the goal of getting stronger over time. Again, you must have a professionally designed, age-appropriate functional strength training program that is strategic and fits your lifestyle. But once your strength goes up, everything else starts to follow so much more easily. I promise you, those of you that are trying to lose fat, if you just scrap that plan of losing fat for 90 days and just did that one thing, just worked on getting stronger over 90 days, I can promise you what happens after that 90 days is so much better than anything you've been fighting with up to now. Number 2 action item is you got to stop fighting food and start fueling your body. Food is not your enemy. And some of you with this restrictive relationship with food get you into this bad relationship with food. So here's the reframe. Instead of constantly trying to eat less and think about restriction, I want you to shift your thinking to eating enough of the right things. What that looks like is more protein, more whole foods, less highly processed foods, more consistency. You're no longer trying to out-discipline your hunger. Again, that might have worked in your 20s. I'm here to tell you that's a horrible strategy for anybody listening to this podcast right now. You're supporting your body so it can actually perform and recover. That's how I want you to think about fuel now. All right, number 3 actionable item is you got to build a repeatable week. I think we touched on this last week. I think we've probably touched on this a few times over the last couple of weeks, but this is the glue. You stop relying on perfect days because a perfect day, like I said, you can do everything perfectly and you're going to look in the mirror tomorrow and nothing's going to change. But when we start building a simple weekly structure that fits our life, something that works even when work is busy or your energy is not perfect or life gets messy, because it's gonna, then that's where the magic happens, because consistency comes from structure, not from your motivation. Motivation is going to come and go. That is a very fickle friend. All right, number 4 action item. We got to slow down the timeline. We just got to drag this out a little bit. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. I know a whole bunch of y'all want to lose your 20 pounds or look great in your dress or in your bikini or whatever it is this summer. I'm recording this here. Let's see. This is going to go out, I think, April 1st, April 2nd. So anyway, beginning of April. But a whole lot of y'all are thinking about, hey, I got to get my beach body. Yeah. Look, some of you that are really close, you have rip-roaring metabolisms and you're in striking range, go for it. You're right there. You got the last mile. For a whole lot of you, though, think about beach body next year. Right? I know that's not what you want to hear, but when you stop chasing fast results, you start trusting a realistic timeline. This is going to give your body time to adapt and recover and build and respond. Because again, after 50 and your 60s, certainly in your 70s, the timeline is the strategy. So let's stretch that out a little bit. So here's the big picture. You do not need a brand new plan. You need a better aligned version of what you've already been doing. For some of you, that's going to be less extreme. For some of you, it's going to be more intentional, more consistent. And look, when we put all those pieces together, fat loss stops feeling like something you've got to force, and it starts feeling like something that your body's actually willing to do. So let's pause here for a second. I want to ask you guys a couple of questions. Again, this is a no judgment zone. I don't want anybody to feel bad, no guilt. We're just going to meet ourselves with honesty, with love, where we are right now. Just a quick check-in on ourselves. So question number 1 for you. Are you consistently fueling your body, or are you still trying to eat less and hoping that that's the answer? Question number 2. Are you actually getting stronger over time, or are you just staying busy with workouts that feel productive? Number 3. If someone looked at your last week, your last 7 days, your training, your nutrition, your movement, would they see a clear, sane, repeatable structure, or a mix of good intention and some guesswork? Question number 4. When progress slows, what's your default move? Do you step back and adjust, or do you just double down and try and push harder? And finally, here's the big one. I think I've asked this every week here in the last couple of weeks. But if you keep doing exactly what you're doing right now for the next 90 days, is that going to move you closer to your goal? Or do you feel like something in the back of your mind or deep down in your gut saying, this might just be keeping me stuck in the same place? And look, there's no right or wrong answers to these questions, but once you see clearly what's actually happening, I feel like that's the key to getting unstuck, because most likely for most of you, you're just a few adjustments away from moving forward again. So here's what I want you to take away from this episode. You are closer than you think, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. Even if the scale just refuses to budge, even if progress has been really slow or maybe it's completely plateaued, even if you've been frustrated for quite some time now, because here's the reality. You're not starting from zero. You're already doing some things right. You're already invested. You care, right? You're already making an effort. You're paying attention. You care about your health. You just tuned into a podcast and listened to me babble about this for the last, 15, 20 minutes, a podcast titled Over 50 Health and Wellness. So that matters, right? What's been missing isn't effort, it's alignment. It's just a few small adjustments in perhaps how you train and how you fuel your body and how you structure your week and how you think about your timeline. And these things can completely change the direction you're heading. And once all the pieces start clicking together, they start working together, progress doesn't feel like a grind. It doesn't. It starts to feel like actual momentum. That's when we start to get some energy back, and then our confidence starts to build. And that's when those results finally start to show up again. Not because you suddenly became way more disciplined or because you just found this magical pill of motivation, but because you're finally doing the right things in the right way. So you're not that far off. You're definitely not stuck forever. You're definitely not too old. You're just a few starter moves away from things clicking again. All right, so let's close this thing out here. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, okay, yeah, Kev, that kind of makes sense. I can see a few of these mistakes that I've been making, or maybe some of you have been making all of them, but I'm not really sure what I need to change or how I'd put that into practice. Well, good news. That's exactly where most people get stuck, not because they're not trying, but because they don't have any clarity. They don't know which mistake matters most for them, what to fix first, or how to adjust without making things worse. Nobody wants that. And that's where having a second set of eyes can make all the difference. And that's why I offer free clarity calls. This is not a sales pitch. It is a conversation. So we're going to look at what you're currently doing, where things might be misaligned, and what a simple, realistic path forward looks like for you. Because once you know what to focus on, everything gets easier. You're going to stop guessing. You're going to stop spinning your wheels, and you finally can start moving forward with confidence. So if that sounds helpful, you guys can book a free clarity call with me using the link in the show notes, because you don't need more effort. You just need to fix what's actually holding you back. All right, folks, that's what I've got for you this week. Until next time, stay strong. Okay, that's our show for today, folks. If you are over 50 and you feel frustrated or stuck and you want a clear plan, I invite you to book a free clarity call with me. You guys can find a link to learn more in the show notes for this episode, and you can find that on whatever app you're listening to this on, or head over to silveredgefitness.com/415. As we wrap up our time together today, you can show your support for this show in two important ways. The first is tell a friend about this podcast and encourage them to give it a listen. The second is for you YouTube folks to click the like and subscribe buttons, and for you podcast folks to please give this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, and be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today, and until next time, stay strong.